Ritter. She stood behind Rita looking sour as always, like the wind was blowing past a manure pile right in her direction. President Roosevelt could get out of his wheelchair and ask her to dance, and she'd act like she was two-stepping with a hired man. Agnes T. Ritter had turned up her little sliver of a lip at Rita's dress, which was as dainty as a hanky, made of strips of lace and red silk. I could see the strap of a red slip that she wore under it, and I meant to ask Ada June where anybody bought a red slip. Grover'd think I'd gone to town for sure if I put on red underwear. We always dressed up for Persian Pickle Club, but none of us wore anything as fancy as that. Certainly not Agnes T. Ritter, who wore $1.49 house dresses from the Spiegel catalog and made her own slips. It didn't matter how she dressed, of course, because she was as knobby as a washboard. Agnes T. Ritter, you sure are jealous, I thought. That's when I decided I would be a good friend to Rita. She could use one, with Agnes T. Ritter for a sister-in-law. And with Ruby gone to California and never coming back, I myself needed a best friend my own age. "This is Rita, Tom's wife," said Mrs. Ritter, who was Agnes T. Ritter's mother and Rita's new mother-in-law. Naturally, we knew Rita was Rita. But I guess Mrs. Ritter felt it might be a good idea to say something, since not one of us had given her a word of welcome. Our manners must have been under that same bucket with Rita's luck. I was the first one to speak, as I usually am. I smoothed the rick-rack around the neck of my dress and said, "I'm Queenie Rebecca Bean, Grover's wife. We're glad Tom came back and brought you with him, because Tom is Grover's best friend, even though Grover went to farming instead of to the university. We live out in the country, 3 farms down from you, in the yellow house that looks like dried egg yolks. The place is even brighter in the fall when the willows turn. Grover says it's like living inside a lemon." I stopped long enough to take a breath, then added before anyone else could speak, "Welcome to Pickle. I'm the youngest member." Grover always says I'm the talkingest woman he knows when I get nervous. Grover doesn't say a word when he's rattled, so together, we're about normal. Rita ran the tip of her tongue over her upper lip and looked at me out of the corner of her eye. "I like a stand of willows," muttered Opalina Ducks, who said something queer most times she opened her mouth, so no one paid attention to her. Ada June Zinn, who was the hostess that day, said, "I guess Queenie spoke for all of us. Welcome to the Persian Pickle Club." Rita put out her hand, and Ada June stared at it until Mrs. Judd said, "Shake it, Ada June. That's what it's there for." In Harveyville, women didn't shake hands with one another. Ada June wasn't quite sure what to do, so she put the tips of her fingers into Rita's palm. Rita went around the circle, offering her hand to everybody, and when she came to me, I shook it hard, and she winked at me. When Rita was finished with the handshakes, she and Mrs. Ritter sat down in the 2 empty chairs at the end of the table. It was a minute before Ada June realized she hadn't counted Rita when she'd set out the chairs. She was 1 short, and there was no place for Agnes T. Ritter to sit. Ada June jumped up and got an old straight back from the kitchen, and we all moved around to make room. Left standing is the story of Agnes T. Ritter's life. "Did you bring sewing?" Mrs. Judd asked Rita. Mrs. Judd knew she hadn't, of course. Rita couldn't have gotten a pin into that tiny purse of hers. "Oh," Rita said, "I don't sew." I'd never met a woman who didn't sew. None of us had.